Now, hers has been described as a challenging tenure following numerous reports, judgments as well as appeals, and an attempt by Parliament to unseat her as the country's public protector. This Women's Month, advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane looks back at her own challenges and also, however, looks ahead to the meaning of Women's Month. She joins us now to reflect on her thoughts. Advocate Mkhwebane, pleasure to have you on the Daytime Update, and happy Women's Month to you.
Thank you so much, Tammy. Thank you for inviting me, and good evening to your viewers and listeners.
When we talk,
to all women.
Thank you so much. Now, when we focus on Women's Month, what do you believe is the contemporary significance of Women's Month, and how should South African women really be marking this period in a way that will make it meaningful for today's women too?
You know, for me, Women's Month, and in fact, daily, 365 degrees or 65 days, women should be supporting each other. We should be sisters keeper in all what we do, and support one another always. I think firstly start with yourself as a woman, to love yourself, so that when you are going to embrace and love and support another woman, it means you have embraced and loved yourself first. So I think for me that is very critical for us to do as women, and we will also be able then to love humanity broadly if we do that.
You talk about the importance of women supporting each other. Who are the women who have supported you throughout your life, throughout your career, and that support can be both a professional support but also a personal support?
I must say that firstly, women who supported me the most, well, my mother, may her soul rest in peace, my sisters, and all the saints, women of God, who've been there praying for me daily, and they've been there always, you know. And professionally, there's a lot of women who keep praying for me as well. I've got my friends, we're calling ourselves Akwande girls. A lot of them are legally qualified. They are in all the spheres of public service, private sector. So I would say I receive a lot of prayers from them, a lot of women pastors, women bishops and apostles.
And as far as Advocate Thuli Madonsela, you took the reins from her. How is your relationship?
Our relationship is cordial, it's fine. We don't communicate a lot, but we do sometimes when the need arises, we do communicate. And I must indicate that there were some matters where we needed to also go back to her, request for her assistance, especially the vendor pension fund, which matter is still before court, and there was one report issued during her tenure, and then I issued a special report on that particular matter.
You know, there's always a phrase, whether it's true or not, you will tell me from your own experience, that women don't often support other women. And you will remember that also there was a time when there were rumors or allegations of a relationship that is not very cordial between yourself and the former public protector. What are your thoughts and comments on that?
You know, unfortunately, that's what media has been promoting, you know, media promoting that issue of promoting conflict where there's no conflict, and hence I said our communication, our work, or my communication with her has been cordial. And I must indicate that during my bereavement, when my mother passed on, she also called and, you know, passed her condolences. So we are Africans, Tammy. As Africans, I think we should also not promote this what people are saying, or then, the promotion of people thinking that there is bad blood between certain professionals. So I think there is that communication. And I think not only her, because I also communicate with other public protectors, Advocate Mushwana. I do keep in touch as well. He does as well check whether I'm doing fine or doing okay. And I must indicate as well that being the public protector, I'm the president of African Ombudsman and Mediators Association, and I work a lot with other women ombudsmen around the continent. And now I'm serving in the board of IOI, where as well there are women ombudsmen, and our relationship, our communication, and how we can change the world, how we can make sure that our countries, there's peace, there's good governance, there's respect for human rights. So that's the relationship I would say I will have with any women who are in leadership, and besides only women, even including men.
Let's talk about your role as public protector. It's an important portfolio with a lot of responsibility, but you've also had quite a challenging tenure in this period as public protector. How would you describe that experience? What have you learned from it? What do you continue to learn from it?
That experience has been a very difficult experience. I must indicate since I joined this institution, I'm now approaching my 5th year. It has been a very rocky process, which I have done with love. I have done with the satisfaction that I've changed a lot of people's lives. I mean, I would indicate, Tammy, that my challenges also started with, having challenges with the media, the way they report about me, my office, and how we do the work, challenges which I face with some of the members of the executive ministers who will just go on Twitter or through the media and write very disturbing stories. Also challenges of some of the judgments where judges in their comments will be very harsh and unnecessarily so. Some of the attacks which I faced from the members of some of the legislatures or members of parliament. So it has been all those challenges, Tammy, but I must indicate that I receive a lot of, or I have a lot of solace, from the work which we do as an institution, the lives which we are changing. Also, some of the challenges of budget cuts which we faced as an institution, and must indicate that through it all, by the grace of God, I'm still standing and I'm still willing and serving the South Africans.
After every negative judgment, after every tweet, we are all human beings, we are all people, and we are not left unaffected by the negative things that people say to us. How has that impacted you? How has that affected you as a person, as a human being?
It has made me stronger. It has made me to have thick skin, and being a Christian, it also showed me that the only hope, or the only hope which I'll have, it's only in God, and that's what I've gone through, and I mean, praying a lot helps, and I think the people I've mentioned earlier who've been there supporting, praying for me, but as well sometimes the only hope which one you face in life is that sometimes there will be people you'll expect that they will say something or defend or protect you, but I think when you are in this position, the only thing you can do is focus on what you have been placed to do or what you are meant to be doing, and not allow things to defocus you. I think It's one thing as well to, I mean, you won't be loved by everyone.
And let me ask you this: when are the times that you have felt disappointed in people not standing up for you? The times when you felt somebody should have said something and they did not?
You know, I issued the CX report, which was investigated by my predecessor, I think, for 4 or 5 years before I joined the institution. And that report was also meant to, you know, contribute and made South Africans to realize that there are resources out there which can be utilized to change people's lives, and showing that, you know, the current provisions of the Reserve Bank, in fact, the provisions of what the Reserve Bank is meant to do and whether it's doing that for the South Africans. And you find that then the very same people you are trying to protect and bring things which will change their lives, but are the very same people who will be attacking you. I think being disappointed a lot as well by how you would be issuing reports which are trying to change the status quo, or trying to bring, changes to people's lives, the grassroots, and that address the triple challenges which we're facing as a country: unemployment, poverty, and inequality. But then you face a very serious pushback, and you'd find NGOs who are calling themselves protectors of the Constitution being the ones who are leading the charge of, wanting to push you out of the system, and failing the very same people at the grassroots who needs that vibrant, civil society to protect.
Let me ask you this, Advocate. Let me ask you this. Do you feel personally targeted?
Definitely, I do feel personally targeted, because possibly I am not doing what those who are oppressing the masses are expecting to continue or to keep the status quo. Because, and as well, being the public protector, showing that we work independently, we can't be influenced, we can't be dictated to in how we do our work. Yes, I feel that I'm being targeted, Tammy, because you are not supposed to be investigating certain individuals who have the resources to fight and take you to court, because we are defending the public who don't have those resources to fight this biblical Goliath called the state.
Let's take a bit of a pause now, Advocate, and when we come back, Advocate Mkhwebane, we'll continue talking about the two aspects that you highlighted now, those who are oppressing the masses and not investigating certain individuals, as we continue marking Women's Month today, speaking to formidable women who find themselves in challenging situations and how they navigate around those. Do stay with us. We'll be back with Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane in just a moment. Thank you for staying with us. We are in conversation with Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane, Public Protector of South Africa, as we mark Women's Month. Now, Advocate, just before we took the break, you were talking about feeling personally targeted, saying that taking on the mammoth state is really something that should not be taken lightly. Let's talk about the outcome of your CR17 report. You, at some point, said that President Ramaphosa was deliberate in what you call a lie, and that he should be held accountable for that. Talk us through your reasoning and why you believe that this is the case.
President Cyril Ramaphosa, the complaint was lodged by the DA. I think we should start there. I never investigated the matter on own initiative. And when the complaint was lodged, the Public Protector will check what happened, what should have happened, what prescripts have been violated. And this matter was lodged in terms of the Executive Members Ethics Act. And on our investigation, we discovered that the process which was followed by the President during the CR17 campaign, we investigated because he was the Deputy President at the time, and he was the Member of Parliament, the Deputy Presidents are, and when he answered the questions in Parliament, he was then now the President of the country. So when we investigated the issues of the monies and what was paid and the donations, that finding was relating to the time he was the Deputy President. But then on him being the President, answering the questions in Parliament without, it was actually a follow-up question. And we said in the report, there was nothing compelling him to answer immediately, because he was supposed to request that he be given an opportunity to go and prepare, because it was a follow-up question. So that was the finding, irrespective of the fact that he answered and later retracted, because in the rules of Parliament, there's nowhere where it says if a person has then answered and then later they can retract. And as well, Tammy, taking from the previous reports of the institution on how we investigated, and even where a person has made a mistake, normally we will say inadvertently, because we are using the 2007 Ministerial Code, which deals with the issues of the conduct of members, or in fact of the executive. So that's what we investigated, and those were the findings which we came about on those reports.
The Court found that you were not authorized to even engage in this investigation and to engage in having access to the documentation that you had access to. What is your response to that?
My response is that there is a minority judgment of the Chief Justice Mkhwebane, who also took time to go through our papers and understand how we conducted the investigation. I would say we had jurisdiction to investigate. The President was the Deputy President, and he was bound by the relevant prescripts as a member of Parliament to disclose those donations which he received, which he knew about because he attended dinners of those donors. He also was in the process also engaging with several donors on how the monies should be paid from where to where. So I would say, what I would say about the Court judgment is that definitely we've learned from that judgment, and it's concerning that some of the interpretations which were mentioned in the judgment are a concern, because some of them are going against what the prior judgment of the Court was saying, especially the Nkandla judgment.
You say that the President must be held accountable. How?
Accountable because the findings was that, as the president is a constitutional being, Tammy, and I think that's what was also mentioned in the Nkandla judgment. What are the responsibilities of being a president? A president who took office based on the fact that he will be accountable, he will be transparent, he will make sure that he addresses and deals with corruption. A president who was also saying we don't want to have estate captured or the capture of the capture of the state, because normally most of the time when you have business people who will then pay or contribute to any campaign or pay for services for any member of the executive, that is a process which will lead to capturing, because the person or those people will be expecting to receive favors or some benefits. I think the Executive Members Ethics Act is very clear, Tammy, because, and even the Constitution, Section 96 says, members of the executive should not expose themselves to a conflict. You don't even need to prove a conflict of interest, but just exposing yourself to that conflict. So this process of the Busasa investigation was very clear that we investigated independently, and we wanted to reveal that this is the process which any leader who is honorable, who is accountable, who is transparent should conduct themselves accordingly. And one of the findings or the remedies was that let that process be, in fact, especially the parliamentary process, because by then he was the deputy president, let him then declare those, and those be made public so that anyone can know who donated to that particular campaign. So that was done purely to make sure that everyone is held to account, everyone is equal before the law. So it was purely...
Advocate, why is it that so many of your recommendations and your reports are being set aside? You've been accused of lying as far as the SARS report is concerned, lying under oath. You've been accused of acting in bad faith. You've been accused of applying the law incorrectly, of trying to change the law, of going beyond your jurisdiction. Why so many adverse findings against you?
How many, Tammy? How many?
I can go through the number of these. There's the Absa Bancor matter.
Out of how many?
There's the Absa. The thing is, Advocate, these are quite important and seminal challenges. And these are the challenges that do make the headlines, as you rightly said. The question is how many. But these are very important, reports that you put together, and really important judgments that are being overturned by the courts. There's the Absa Bancor matter. Yes. There's the Estina Dairy Farm. There's the Cele versus yourself. There is the CR17 campaign funding.
It's 14 out of 274 reports. Yes.
So what do you make of that?
We are learning from those reports, Tammy. We're checking how the courts have interpreted our findings and our remedies. I must indicate as well, Tammy, that the Concord judgment, the Nkandla judgment, is the one which says the remedial actions of the public protector are binding unless set aside by the court. So that's a judicial process that's proper for people who are not happy with our remedies, because I'm also not above the law. Our reports will also undergo scrutiny. And those reports were set aside, those 14. Out of that as well, we've got 8 which were successfully defended. And again, when we defend them, Tammy, I said, it's for the benefit of the poor, the masses, or people who are impacted by that report so that they can we redress any prejudice which they've suffered. And I must indicate that it's so unfortunate that, which I always say to my counterparts around the globe, that they shouldn't wish to have binding remedial action, because anyone who's not happy with that will definitely go to court. And when they go to court, then you find challenges where you are having or being labeled in such manner. And when you say there is one where it said I lied under oath and it's a SARS matter, is not correct. I never lied under oath. And I think if you're referring to the perjury case which has been opened, it's so unfortunate there as well that a lot of the times when we make representations, they take the very same representation, they've dropped one of the charges, but we will still proceed with the process and make further representation. And for now, the matter is still before court, which we will have to see whether they will also have to call those judges who made certain remarks, maybe to be witnesses in that matter, and possibly they must prove whether there was any intention for me to lie, and I never lied, because we have evidence proving that that matter was dealt with properly.
Advocate, do you feel that you've been treated fairly by the courts?
No, some of the judgments, no, and some of the judges, no. I don't feel I'm being treated fairly. Some have been very objective, which I've always been asking, because at the end of the day, being a judge, you need to make sure that Lady Justice is blind, irrespective of who is appearing before them. I mean, you've known there are judgments which are out there where during my predecessor's time, the findings were that remedy protector binding unless set aside by the court. You can instruct any other state organ to do the following, but then with my or under my responsibilities, that is questionable, which is the challenges which one is faced with. But I must indicate, Tammy, that it's so good that some of those judgments, they then also show the public that there's still more to be done for us to be a purely constitutional state where justice is served and justice is delivered, and where we shouldn't be looking at who is involved, but just focus on the facts before them and focus on what the law is saying.
When we return, Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane will focus on the current unfolding actions in Parliament, as well as the latest ruling that was made regarding the parliamentary process to have you removed from your office as a public protector. Do stay with us. We're in conversation with Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane, Public Protector of the Republic of South Africa. Guest this afternoon, as we usher in Women's Month, Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane, Public Protector of the Republic. Thank you for your time this afternoon, Advocate. Let's talk about the latest court challenge, and that was meted out on Wednesday. You are challenging the process that's currently underway in Parliament to have you removed as Public Protector of the Republic. Tell us about the significance of this ruling. You wanted it all to be ruled unconstitutional, the entire process, but the Constitutional Court did find in your favor on 2 counts. Talk to us about that and why that is so seminal.
Yes, the Western Cape High Court, Tammy, not the Constitutional Court. Yes, that is very important because it's at the core of the process of requesting that those rules, because whatever they've set aside are part of the rules or the broader rules which are there to remove a Chapter 9 or head of a Chapter 9 institution, which is clear now. Those rules were just purely made to deal with me. the very important part is that that panel, which was appointed by the Speaker, was said to be unlawful because it also violates the principle of separation of power. And that's at the core, and that's why they've moved to now appointing the ad hoc committee. Therefore, setting aside that panel's report is very critical. Then it means there must be another process which is followed to relook into the motion of the DA, and also you cannot have the rules which are now cut and paste or being dealt with in bits and pieces. So it means they'll have to relook into the rules from there, make sure that they start the process from scratch, and after that then we can proceed with the matter, because the ad hoc committee is invalid ab initio as well, because it was not supposed to have been established, because they were established after that panel said there is a prima facie case for me to answer.
So do you consider this a win?
Definitely, it is. I don't know whether to say it's a win, but it's justice. I think those justices focused on what the law is saying, and they've applied the law. So, and that also makes sure that there is proper processes which is followed, because surely the Speaker and them, they should make sure that they operate within the provisions of the law, and the resources of the state are used properly, and they are not misused, because then the question is, again, appointing the panel, what resources were utilized for that. And after we've written several times, Tammy, I must indicate that we wrote several letters requesting that this matter be resolved amicably. We discuss, we engage. And if that was the case, we wouldn't be finding ourselves in this quagmire.
Before I let you go this afternoon, I've always wanted to know, when you took the sabbatical earlier on this year, how was that for you, and where did you go? What did you do?
The sabbatical, which is provided for in terms of the conditions of service of the Public Protector, I was home, Tammy, and God being good, I had to spend the last days of my mother's, in fact, days on earth, and I was spending a lot of time with her, with the local communities, encouraging them to also, have their own backyard gardens, working with them, encouraging the youth as well to do that. I think it also gave me a lot of time to, focus on my family, my children, my grandchildren. So it gave me that time to, regain energy. And yes, I came back in April, and work is continuing, and I'm happy that the team led by the DPP also continued to do sterling work, and they are still continuing to do that.
And your Women's Month message to the women of South Africa?
I opened with that and said, let's love each other, but then start by loving yourself, taking care of yourself. Therefore, you will be able to take care of any other person, irrespective of women, men, children, boys, girls. In fact, humanity. I think the message I will give to them is, let's support each other. Let's make sure that we create a legacy for our generations to come, because whatever we're doing now, we are planting. It depends on what we are planting, because surely we will reap, and unfortunately, if we don't, our generations to come will be reaping. So let's make sure that they reap what is good and not reap what it's evil.
Are women in the legal fraternity marginalized in some way. Do you feel that maybe a lot of the negativity that you may be getting with some of the reports are because of your gender?
Yes, Tammy, that is also contributing, and a lot of women in the legal fraternity are marginalized. I mean, we've got a lot of women who are advocates, leading firm of attorneys, but we see them rarely. I think even the briefing patterns, it's still a struggle. I must indicate that as an institution, we are trying by all means as well to, transform and uplift those who are previously disadvantaged. If you see, a lot of our legal teams are also promoting that, but we will also want to have more legal representation who are, female SCs, female attorneys who are leading in this sphere. I think there's still more to be done, but that can be done especially by the state, because, I mean, state attorney would have to also be very intentional in their briefing of especially women attorneys or women, in fact, women counsels to defend the state on several matters. So that's where at least there would be.
All right, we'll leave it at that for this afternoon. Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane, Public Protector, thank you very much for your time today.